For all intents and purposes, it's October. It's September 29th right now, but in baseball language, it's October because we have playoff baseball tomorrow. This is the Deep Drive on the Ball Institute Network. I am your co-host, Ahan Rungta, here as always with my co-host, Max. Max, playoff start tomorrow for both of us. I feel like it has been an awkward season for your Tigers. It has been an awkward season for my Red Sox, but look at us. Who would have thought? We're here. How are you feeling?
Like, I'm happy the Tigers made it, but I'm really not feeling good just because the Tigers. I read somewhere in an article talking about the Tigers' collapse. I don't think a team has ever come back from a 15 and a half game deficit in the division to win the division. So the Tigers, like, this collapse is historic. And not, I mean, at one point, Tiger fans were talking about getting a bye and finishing with the best record in the American League. And then in the end, Detroit barely even made the playoffs. And now, I mean, we're playing a best of 3 game series in Cleveland. It's crazy to me. And then I was also disappointed that yesterday the Tigers treated the game like they acted like the Tigers acted like they won the division. Riley Green, Dylan Dingler, Spencer Torkelson, Gleyber Torres all did not play, even though the Tigers were tied for first place, while Cleveland, I'm pretty sure, played all their regular players. And then the Tigers, AJ Hinch did not want to use anyone as pinch hitters, even though the Tigers had players, I think it was 2 men on in the 9th inning, and they let Jake Rogers hit just because. And then they also let Chris Paddock throw over 100 pitches, even though the Tigers don't play tomorrow. I mean, they don't play today. And Cleveland ended up winning, but maybe if Cleveland had known that the Tigers had won, maybe they lose. I don't know. I'm happy we made it, but it's still true now that the Tigers have not won the division since 2014. So,
Which is wild because it feels like the Tigers have been dominant for longer than I imagined. Like last year, I thought they would be good, and then my only futures bet of the first round of the playoffs last year was the Tigers to win the series against the Astros, and it felt like that was such a dominating series victory that it feels like the Tigers have established their dominance. Meanwhile, they haven't even won the division in this new era of the Tigers. So it feels weird in the fact that they were up so many games at the start of the regular season, or halfway through the regular season.
even in September, they were up by 10 games. No one thought the Tigers were going to blow the division except maybe Cleveland. But it's hard for me to really be happy given how the teams played recently. And it's not like the Tigers finished the year strong. They lost 2 out of 3 to Boston. They lost 2 out of 3 to Cleveland. They lost their final 7 home games, including getting swept by the Braves, who were out of it, and the Tigers got swept by Cleveland at home. And before that, they lost 2 out of 3 to the Marlins. I just have no reason to think the Tigers are the final team in the playoffs in the American League. Their chances are no longer even decent of winning the World Series. The Tigers are going to have to win 4 rounds like the Red Sox.
And speaking of the Red Sox, I mean, we're going to talk about every single team, obviously. This is the playoff edition of the Deep Drive, and it's the first of our series of playoff editions. And I'd like to comment about how anticlimactic my take on the World Series contenders have been, because first of all, you said that the Tigers were up so many games at the beginning of September. You know how I know that? This is episode 11. This is only our 11th episode of the show, right? And I remember on multiple of our shows, which is not that long ago, I was talking about how the Tigers are by far the best team in the American League. That's how I know how colossal of a collapse it's been. Meanwhile, for the Red Sox, people know I'm a Red Sox fan, but people also know I'm very skeptical of this current Red Sox organization, the way it's been run the last couple of years. So much so that perhaps I was overly pessimistic about this team. And I feel like the biggest L I've taken since we started this podcast has been that I thought the Red Sox were completely out of it a few weeks ago. And we've also talked about, like, are they still contenders? And I think the answer is no. They're not contenders in any regard. But they're in a playoff bracket, and if some of these recent wildcard teams, such as the recent D-backs, have been any proof that, like, truly anything is possible, nobody has a 0% chance, as I claimed last week of one team. Nobody has a truly 0% chance of winning the World Series. It can get crazy, and the fact that, wildcard series, they expanded the playoffs to 3 wildcard teams, but also comes with the best of 3 wildcard series. There used to be a 1-game wildcard, and
the funny thing is that a 1-game wild card would actually be good for the Tigers and the Red Sox, actually.
Exactly. I mean, this is something I was going to ask you. Like, what are your thoughts on the new playoff format? Just like, because people have, like, such varying opinions about this. Like, I promote anything that, the 1-game playoff format I just don't like in baseball. Like, I understand there is randomness to every sport, to every playoffs. Like, football, like, it's a 1-game setting because they have to play a 1-game setting for that sport. But also, like, objectively, the best teams have a better chance of winning in the NBA playoffs because they play best of 7, not best of 3, not best of 5. That's just an objective fact. And I like the randomness of, like, a shorter series in the sense of, like, you don't know what's going to happen. That's what makes something like March Madness so ridiculous. But at the same time, like, expanding the playoffs to me gives a chance for teams who are, like, completely directionless or, like, don't know if they want to win a World Series anytime in the next few years to sneak into the playoffs. And, like, there's pros and cons to both. So what are your thoughts on the general playoff format these days?
I think there was something exciting about it being, like, a 1-game playoff, even though you're right that, like, that's truly, I mean, 1 game, like, anything can happen, but that's also part of what made it so exciting. But I mean, I think a best of 3 is more fair. Like, in the case of Cleveland and Detroit, Cleveland won the division. I don't know how, but they won the division. So I think it's fair that the outcome of this first series, it's a best of 3 at their stadium. That's giving them, that's closer to, like, a proper reward for winning your division. So, and I think it's 40% of the teams in Major League Baseball make the playoffs, which 12 out of 30, which is in fact 40%. That's kind of
good math.
It's not so many teams, but like I feel like the Tigers, they can't be, like, that proud that they made the playoffs because almost half the league makes the playoffs.
But also there's, the situation of, like I mentioned NBA about, like, best of 7, right? Like, there's also the case that, like, many NBA playoff teams are just clearly, like, they clearly do not belong in a playoff setting. Like, you think of playoff basketball and you think of, like, the 2016 finals, right? The LeBron 3-1 comeback against the Warriors. And then you think of some playoff series that you see where where a sweep is the most likely outcome. Like, I don't enjoy seeing likely sweeps in the NBA playoffs. So in that regard, like, I do like this baseball playoff format. The fact that, like, yes, around 40% of the league makes it, but also, like, most of them have, like, an actual chance of making it deep. Like, if some things go right, they can make it deep into the playoffs. So I like that. Skin Souls, appreciate the follow. Be like Skin Souls and join the Twitch streams. We stream each week. The playoff edition for our brackets is today, which is Monday. But other than that, we stream every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern time on Twitch. And if you want to be in our Discord where we talk about all sports and you get my sports betting stuff and my fantasy football weekly rankings, wap.com/ball-institute. You can get all that content, fantasy sports and betting content. And you can read some of Max's articles, obviously, for free, but also get notifications for it. Do that. And all of that for less than $1 per day. So that is up to you. But for the rest of this show, we're filling out our playoff bracket. That's why we're here on Monday instead of Tuesday. I think it's only right we fire up. Max, you can fire up your screen for this one. We start with the Tigers Guardians because that's what's on the top left. It just happens to be on the top
Okay.
bracket.
Let me click the link.
So what's gonna happen is we're gonna talk through each series, and we're each gonna make a pick, and that's how it's gonna be. Let's get it. Also, just side note, light mode is crazy.
Oh, this is what it's on.
That's
I don't
fair.
use Google Chrome that much. I mean, actually, I do. I've been using Safari more. So,
Mhm.
okay.
All right, Max, let's get going.
For the Tigers and Guardians, do you still see my bracket even though I'm looking at the notes?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was talking to my dad about this series because the likelihood was even before the games yesterday, even if the Tigers had won and Cleveland had lost, this would be the matchup, Tigers-Cleveland. And I was saying how, I mean, Skubal's starting game one, which the Tigers are likely to win, but in the other two games, it's going to be closer. And the odds for this series are close to 50-50, which, I mean, I understand. It's best of three on the road. But Cleveland, like I've said this before, I don't know about on the podcast, but the Guardians, they're luck merchants. Like I think they have a negative run differential. There's a Twitter account called MLB Deserve to Win a Meter, and the Guardians led Major League Baseball. They won 14. Maybe the model's not perfect, but they had the greatest difference between wins and expected wins. They won over 14 more games than you would have expected, which that like model looks at how hard the balls were hit and the angles and then like does simulation. So Cleveland, and I already said it, they actually gave up more runs than they scored this season. So their offense is not good. And I even checked Fangraphs, like one of their writers, I don't know how to say his last name, but his first name is the guy who does Zips. That Dan Szymborski or whatever. His simulations have the Tigers winning, and I think that like Skubal's amazing. So like that game, I already know that the Tigers are favored to win, and then neither team has a great offense, but Cleveland's offense is like really bad, and the bullpen, like Cleveland has some like Hunter Gaddis, Cade Smith, like their back end is strong, but their starting rotation, like Bybee, Gavin Williams, like I can't pick again. Even though I'm critical of the Tigers, I actually think the Tigers are going to win their first round matchup.
I respect that, and Jesus Christ, this background thing is not working. All right, I respect that. Like you said, this series opened up as literally a pick 'em on every single sports book. Pick 'em, like you said, it's 50-50, you know, -110 with the VIG, et cetera, et cetera. Let's talk a little bit about these teams overall. So in a vacuum, the Tigers ranked this season in the regular season number 12 in WRC plus as an offense. If you only filter for the second half of the season, so since the All-Star break, it's number 21. Short way of saying that, they fell off. As a bullpen in Sierra, I like Sierra. It's a little bit more predictive than ERA or FIP. Bullpen Sierra since the All-Star break, and I know, Max, you have some pitching statistics of your own. Detroit ranked number 26 in bullpen Sierra since the All-Star break, while Cleveland ranked number 3 overall. Now, I do want to say, like, as with like most statistics, if you look at like a team's overall statistics, right, like that's not fully – this not even partially, it's only partially representative of what you might see in a playoff setting, right? Like no game in the playoffs is going to be treated like a random Thursday night in July. Starting pitchers coming out of the bullpen all the time, starting pitchers coming out like in the middle of an inning to get a big strikeout, stuff like that. Pitchers pitching on short rest, leashes being very short because you don't want someone to see the order 3 times unless you're like a Tarek Skubal or Garrett Crochet potentially. But, everything's sort of different. So take these stats with a grain of salt, but it's just a representation of kind of the results we've seen recently. The biggest difference is the bullpen. The Detroit pitching staff has been injured to a certain extent, like Reese Olson is the biggest one, but also they've just been outright bad, like in the bullpen. The majority of the bullpen has been bad. Now, managers to some extent matter. Like AJ Hinch has experience in the postseason with matchup hunting. So does Alex Cora. Like I feel like we're on the same boat in terms of like we trust our manager more than like potentially like the average manager or like most of the managers that you'll see in the playoffs. So you trust that organizationally they'll make some good decisions. But at the end of the day, like the biggest edge here is Cleveland's bullpen. That's the glaring one. I want to point out that the Tigers, some of the money has potentially moved towards the Tigers' direction because Tigers may be a very popular pick after they won in the first round last year. They spent most of the season being dominant this year. I understand if most of the public is on the Tigers, and that has moved the Tigers to small favorites in this series. Something else I did want to bring up is like I mentioned this on previous shows. Like I value offenses that lift the ball, and just because like you hit home runs, you win playoff series. That's just how it goes over a large sample size. The team that hits more home runs usually wins the playoff series, and that gets magnified like in the playoffs over the regular season. You face good pitchers, you got to hit the long ball. So for this reason and the fact that Cleveland, their offense is bad, I put up the graphic of the luck you talked about earlier. I think the Tigers are still potentially the better sum of roster team. But Cleveland, they lift the ball. And playoff teams in the top 10 in fly ball rate this season, the Yankees, the Guardians, the Cubs, the Dodgers, the Tigers, and the Mariners. Cleveland is a few spots ahead of the Tigers. It's unfortunate that these two teams, that Cleveland and Tigers, one of them is getting eliminated first round. But if Cleveland, even if you like cancel out all the luck stuff, like they've got a shot in that they do lift the ball. They do have the potential to hit the ball out of the ballpark. Now, no one's scared of Brian Brocchio potentially, but like even a bad hitter like Bo Naylor, like he lifts the ball and he has experience hitting high velocity. And it's stuff like this that I think like the Tigers eliminated the Guardians eliminated the Tigers last year. I think a lot of us were shocked by, the Lane Thomas grand slam against Tarek Skubal. It probably broke your heart. I'm not trying to just be different. I can't believe I'm doing this when I have never once called them a contender the whole season. I'm picking the Guardians.
I disapprove. Even though I know the series is even. I'm just surprised you're picking Cleveland because not so long ago you were saying how the Tigers are the most complete team in the American League. So I'm a little disappointed in you.
I'm disappointed in myself. Like sometimes in life, you do things, you wake up the next morning and you're like, why did I do that? You learn from life, you adjust, and you do things better in future, right? As an adult, you grow. I think like neurologically as adults, we need to have the ability to live in the real world to adjust to new information. And the new information I've gotten about the Tigers in the second half of the season is that I don't trust any pitcher on this staff outside of Tarek Skubal. And if the Tigers do not win game one, I think we can both agree it is most likely over. And I also think, like, given where the line stands for game one, there is a chance that the Tigers lose game one. And that's all I'll say about the series for now. I mean, I'm going to bet, the playoffs game by game anyway. I'm not betting a future on this series. I think the pick'em price is completely reasonable. But I'm not trying to just be different. I actually didn't know who you were going to pick because you have been very pessimistic about the Tigers recently for good reason. I didn't know if you were going to, kind of go on this pessimistic route and pick the Guardians or not. But I'm picking the Guardians, and if I'm wrong, like I won't be surprised because they do not. You can make an argument they don't deserve to be here.
They don't. They're not. Cleveland is. I know they won the division, and it was fair. Like if you want to be like. Technically, it was fair, but Cleveland they don't have any business being in the playoffs. Like,
yeah,
if they could win the World Series, but that would just be like, it would be. I think it's extremely unlikely. Like, I think if a team has a negative run differential, you should be outlawed from the playoffs.
Yeah, I like the use of the word outlawed potential graphic there. Max, you're going to go back to your screen, and by the way, like when you switch out your screen. Like you don't have to like switch out, like close out your screen. Just leave it shared, and I have the
Oh
ability
yeah,
to switch.
fine. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, share screen.
There we go.
Okay, so for my next pick, you know who I'm picking. I've been saying this team is really good, and ever since I've said they've been really good. I mean, they finished the season extremely well, and I don't think it's maybe they were overperforming a little bit, but I also think they played really well because they are a really good team, and they have a great bullpen, they have a good starting rotation, and they have a great offense. So I'm picking, and they're also favored by a good amount to beat this other team. I'm picking the Yankees to beat the Red Sox.
And I was probably, there is probably, no other series in this entire bracket where I was more confident about what you would pick. Let it be a reminder to those who are new to the show, because there's probably going to be people where this is the first episode of the show they're watching. Let's recap where I've stood on both of these teams over the course of the season. At the beginning of the season, I thought the Red Sox would fight for a playoff spot. There were question marks around their pitching. There were injuries to start the season. As the season went on, they got even more injured, and I was like, this team is not that great. Like, there was a lot of hype in the offseason about the Red Sox. I viewed the Red Sox as less and less of a good team as the season progressed. On June 15th, I'm never going to forget this till the day I die. On June 15th, it was my birthday, and the Red Sox traded Rafael Devers. And it felt like, a truck had found a way to only hit my heart and no other part of my body. That's exactly what it felt like. Ever since then, I was like, okay, the organization has been kind of, on the downhill trajectory for a couple of years now. I see where this is going. We're going to be the Sacramento Kings of Major League Baseball. Like, I was fully committed to the midlife. Then the Red Sox started winning a lot. They faced a lot of bad teams. I was like, this team is fraudulent. You're doing all this stuff against bad teams without your best players. Devers is gone. Multiple starters are injured. Multiple relievers are injured, and multiple hitters are injured. Alex Bregman gets a quad injury. When he comes back, he sucks it up. Then Roman Anthony is like a bright spot on this team, and then he gets hurt, and they're in the playoffs. So that's essentially what happened. Like, one thing led to another, and they're in this playoff bracket. It's been a roller coaster. Ron Mux, appreciate you joining the stream. Always got to acknowledge Ron. He's in every single stream. And sorry, Ricky, that was a stray for your Kings. Meanwhile, the Yankees, right? Like, last year, Max can confirm this. I've known Max for multiple years now. Max can confirm that I viewed the Yankees as a contender last year, so much so that the series started against the Dodgers, and I thought, like, my life is coming to an end. The Yankees are going to win a World Series. And I honestly thought that series was like pretty evenly matched. It did not turn out that way, but that's how high I was on the Yankees last year. I thought there was a legitimate chance they could pull it off. They lose Garrett Cole to start the year, and I'm like, okay, the Yankees, I don't want anyone to get hurt. I don't care who you play for. I don't care who you are as a person. I don't want anybody to get hurt. But the Yankees need to find some other answers. I'm not sure they can do this, right? Like, they can find other answers. I've been a fan of Louis Gill. That stuff has not worked out this year so far. Then they find Cam Schittler, who is potentially in line for a Game 3 start if this series goes 3 games. Cam Schittler is a revelation. He's good. Will Warren is, he's a polarizing player, but for the most part of this season, he's not been good, but he's had a really good stretch. Max Fried, to me, it sounds weird to say, but Max Fried has been better than I thought he would, and he's like a certified ace. Like, we knew that he was an ace caliber pitcher. The velocity decline over the last couple of years, the slight stuff decline in each of the last couple of years. Like, I thought Max Fried was in for like potentially his worst career season. I was wrong about that. Like, he is better than he has, I believe in many metrics, this is his second or third best year of his career. So Max Fried has been absolutely phenomenal. Carlos Rodon is someone like people have viewed like as a bad pitcher because they get so drawn into like how Yankees fans react to his bad starts that we forget that Carlos Rodon is a good pitcher. And I didn't forget that. I posted a thread before the season started about like starting pitchers you want to buy low on. And like one of them was Carlos Rodon because the stuff's always been there. The command was not always there. but there were reports that he was fixing some stuff mechanically, and he's been good this season. So the Yankees have something which not every team, even on this side of the bracket, has, which is a 1-2 punch that you could feel really good about. Like, they will give you 2 good starts, and if they don't give you 2 good starts, you'll actually be kind of surprised. How I view this Yankees team is like this offense. Like I said, they're one of the best in the league overall in WRC plus. Since the All-Star break, even if you look at the smaller sample size, they're still top 5 in baseball in WRC plus. They're among that elite club of teams that lift the ball. They hit a lot of home runs, and when you hit home runs, you can beat anybody in a playoff series, truly, right? And especially when you have 2 dominant starters, you can do this. Where it lacks for me is they have unfortunately drawn the one matchup that they have sucked in all season long. And yes, some of this was with Devers and or Roman Anthony healthy. But we need to talk about, last episode I talked about Alex Cora being a potential manager of the year candidate. Like, I think he should be in serious consideration for it. Lucas Giolito is now out for the series. He has an elbow issue. He is not starting in this series. It's moved the Yankees as slightly more favorites as well. But here's the thing. Both of us, me and Max have both talked about Lucas Giolito being a fraud.
I was almost going to say maybe it's actually good for the Red Sox. I mean, if they were managing like perfectly, then whenever a player gets hurt, then it would never be a good thing. But maybe the Red Sox don't want to start Giolito, especially considering what you said. Like, the Yankees are like the sluggers. Like, Giolito, like, his expected ERA, I'm pretty sure at one point it was in the 5s. Like, maybe this is not someone you want to face the Yankees.
I mean, we've talked about, like, we'll talk about the Cubs in a minute, but, like, I keep saying, like, we talk about the Cubs having bad starting pitching. Lucas Giolito is, like, the perfect Chicago Cub. Like, that's how fraudulent he has been. His expected ERA to finish the regular season was 5.0. That is the second worst of any full season of his career. His worst since his 2018 season, where he was a full-time starter for the first time. So this is arguably his worst season of his career, yet he has a 3.41 ERA. He was about to start a playoff start. I am not just not moved that he's not starting. Obviously, a lack of a resource is going to hurt, right? Like, anybody, missing any arm that's above league average is going to hurt. Here's the thing, like, against the Yankees, do I trust Lucas Giolito? The Yankees have actually hit him very hard in his starts against them this season. Do I actually want Lucas Giolito, or do I want Connerly Early, the guy who the Yankees have not seen any of so far this season? I feel actually not just better about, like, a Connerly Early starting a potential Game 3 against the Yankees than I would with Giolito, but I potentially also feel better about Connerly Early starting in Game 3 than I do about Brian Bayo starting in Game 2, because Brian Bayo has been so dominant against the Yankees the last couple of years, but they've seen him so much. And something's got to give eventually. Brian Bayo is a good number 2, number 3 potential guy, but he's not a Garrett Crochet. He doesn't have multiple elite, with pitches where you feel good about a start no matter how many times he faces an order. You got to win the Crochet versus Fried. Whoever wins that matchup, Crochet versus Fried, I feel like they have. Obviously, you have a huge edge if you win Game 1.
I think if any team wins Game 1, you're probably going to win the series.
But the Red Sox and Yankees are constructed in a way where, like, it's as minimal as it could possibly be, because both of these teams have pitchers out of the bullpen that could potentially do 100% of their job in a 3-game series. The Yankees, because they have guys with good stuff like Camilo Doval, Devin Williams, like, we've talked about them being better than the results. Like, I trust those guys despite their bad results. I trust those guys more than most Yankees fans. David Bednar and Aroldis Chapman, you have a matchup of 2 guys like everyone should trust. But the Red Sox, what they have is a good pitching coach in Andrew Bailey, and it's one of the big reasons they're even in the playoffs. And they have an Alex Cora who somehow pulls the right strings every single time he faces the Yankees in a series. Like, every time he makes a pitching change, damn near, it works. Greg Weissert is potentially the exception to this. I don't want to see him in a matchup against the Yankees. I'm not doing this on purpose, I promise you. Not only am I picking the Red Sox to win, but it's also one of my futures bets for the first round of the playoffs. I got it at a plus 150 price on FanDuel Sportsbook. You can get it slightly better because of the Giolito news now. Plus 156, I believe, on FanDuel. I think that's good value because if you believe in most of the things that I've just said, if you think these teams are as evenly matched as I think, and you think that it should be more close to a coin flip of a probability for the series than the plus 150 price, which translates to, I'm not like Max and can't do mental math quite as well, but that is a 40% implied probability of a Red Sox win, and I think it's closer to 50% than it is 40%. The Yankees are the better roster. Like, we agree with this. They're the better roster right now, but the Red Sox own this matchup. So I have to, for every single purpose that I stand for, I have to put my ball sack where my words have been all season long and pick the Red Sox.
I'm not surprised by your pick, but I would recommend against the bet. Not because I trust you, but I just think the Yankees are really good, and I don't think the Red Sox are so good. So now, are we continuing with the AL, or are we going
let's go over the National League. We got to finish these wild card games.
Okay, I don't think we need to spend that much time on Reds, Dodgers. I mean, the Dodgers are heavily favored to win this series because they're hosting the series, and I mean the Dodgers were the favorites, or close to being the favorites to win the World Series at the start of the year. They have some of their starting pitchers, like maybe they're not the most reliable in terms of like health, like Snell, Ohtani, but like this is maybe the most talented team in the league. So if anyone picks the Reds, they're just doing it to be bold. Like there's no way the Reds are actually more likely to win the series than the Dodgers.
Here's the thing. I agree with you that I'll keep it shorter than we kept the Red Sox-Yankees series. Here's the thing. I think you're completely disregarding the fact that this Dodgers pitching staff is not nearly as good as it has been over the last few years. Yes, the Reds offense is like arguably worse than the Guardians. I would argue they are worse than the Guardians. They are the worst offense in this playoff bracket. When you have the worst offense in the entire playoffs, no one's expecting you to win the first round of the series, or nobody expecting you to win a playoff series. And if they didn't win a game, no one would absolutely be, no one would be surprised. I'll say this: it's a best of three. Weirder things have happened. The DraftKings Sportsbook right now is promoting people to bet the Dodgers specifically to win the World Series. I'm just going to say that. And it's not why I'm doing this. I'm picking the Reds, and hear me out. I'm not saying the Reds are the more likely pick. If I thought that they had a more than 50% chance of winning this series, I would throw 5 units on them at plus 215, which is what it is on FanDuel Sportsbook right now. I think that price is pretty fair, but I'm going to let our boy Ricky do the talking for me here. I have been a fan of Hunter Green since this dude was drafted number 1 overall. I thought that he was going to be a Cy Young winner at some point. I have bet on him to win the Cy Young each of the last 2 years. He has been bothered by injuries each of the last 2 years. He was second in Cy Young odds in the National League at the time of his injury this year, only to Paul Skeens, right? When you're second to Paul Skeens, you're basically the best pitcher in baseball that's human. Andrew Abbott I've never been a fan of, but Nick Lodolo is a guy like, when I faded the Reds in the regular season this year, I was like, this offense is atrocious. This bullpen is atrocious. But if they somehow sneak into the playoffs and they win a series, no one should be surprised. Now, it's tough that they're facing the Dodgers. The Dodgers are potentially the best. You could make an argument they're the best team in the National League. I'm picking the Reds because if you're trying to win a bracket challenge and you want uniqueness to maximize your chances of winning money, you're not picking the Dodgers because the Dodgers are going to be the chalkiest pick of the first round. I'm not betting this series. I will say that. If anything, I will bet game by game. I think the Reds do get at least one game. I will figure out if that is game 1 or game 2. And once you split it in a 1-game series, like if it comes down to game 3, you know who I'm rooting for.
And you're right. The Reds could win the series. I don't see them winning it personally, but
which is completely reasonable. Like I'm not I'm not knocking you for saying the team that's the heaviest favorite of the first round is going to win the
I'm
series.
trying. You're right. There is a difference between trying to win like a bracket challenge. I'm just trying to pick a perfect bracket, and
That is fair.
there are. I did the math. There's 2 to the 11th power, which is a little over 2,000 possible brackets that you can make. So, I mean,
There are 2,048 potential brackets, and on all three series so far, right now, we disagree. Like that is just absolute cinema. And I knew you were going to pick the Dodgers because you do love yourself some reasonable chalk, right? Like you're not going to always pick chalk. You do love yourself some reasonable chalk.
yeah,
Is it time to agree on a series?
I think it is. But this series, this next one, Padres Cubs. This one also based on the odds, and it makes sense. I mean, these two teams have very similar records. They both are like imperfect teams. Like the Cubs, we've talked about their rotation's not. Neither team really has a strong rotation, but the Padres have such a good back end of the bullpen. Like they had a good back end of the bullpen before they traded for Mason Miller, but I mean, they have their fourth best reliever might be their closer, Robert Suarez. Like, my question that like I wrote in the notes is like, how much do these guys have in the tank? Because if they could go all 3 games and throw like 15 pitches a game, like that would be so clutch for the Padres because they don't need Dylan Cease to throw 6 innings. If they could just like load up this cannon and close out all these games, like the Padres are scary. I'm picking the Padres.
I regret to inform our viewers that all your expectations have been subverted, and yeah, I'm truly disappointed. Actually, I'd like to apologize to everyone watching the show coming in with some expectations. I will unfortunately have to actually be on the same side as Max for this one. I've made fun of certain players on the Padres a lot. Maybe I'll save, talking about them for future rounds. But I'm picking the Padres here. This is my second futures bet of the first round. My 2 futures bets are both the bottom of this bracket. I think the Red Sox are good value at plus 150 to win the series. I think that series can go either way. And for the Padres Cubs, I think that the wrong team is favored. The Padres are small underdogs here, plus 106 on FanDuel right now, and when I got it last night. I understand that the home team is the team that's getting 3 games at home are favored. I understand that theory. I also think the Padres will be probably the public pick, but the public is not always wrong. Otherwise, I'd be living in a mansion in Malibu if I just knew how to bet every single series. I don't think the public is always wrong. I think they'll be correct here. The Padres, number 13 ranked offense overall in WRC plus this season, number 6 since the All-Star break. I made fun of their trade deadline for the direction which they're taking their franchise, and maybe I'll go back to flaming them later. But for the intents and purposes of the first round, these additions are really helpful. Ramon Laureano is just like he's in the conversation for best trade deadline and bat acquisition this season. He has been one of the best players in baseball since that trade was made. They also, for some reason, traded for Ryan O'Hearn when they also had Gavin Sheets. That was weird to me. But there's no doubting that the Padres versus the Cubs pitching staffs are probably the biggest mismatches in pitching staffs in the entire first round. The Padres, like you said, they damn near have a guy for every single inning for at least the first 2 games. It was just announced that Nick Pivetta was starting, or it was announced earlier that Nick Pivetta was starting game 1. He has playoff success under his belt. And it has just been announced that Dylan Cease, who Max and I are both higher on than consensus, he was one of your guys for the second half of the season. He's starting game 2. If it gets to a game 3, obviously, just like all the other series, it can go either way. Honestly, it could come down to which way the wind is blowing. Like that's how, high variance baseball can be sometimes, because you get 3 games in Wrigley and all of a sudden, this is a real home run game if the wind is blowing out, and anything can happen. The Cubs, I mentioned this earlier, they are one of the highest fly ball rate teams in baseball. So they have potential to hit home runs and win them a series with offense alone. But at the end of the day, if you get Nick Pivetta and Dylan Cease at the top of a rotation, and Colin Rea might start game 2, I'm taking the team that doesn't have Colin Rea. So I'm picking the Padres.
It's a miracle that we've agreed.
It's actually a miracle. I honestly thought we'd agree on 2 out of 4. Like I actually slept last night thinking, I'm going to pick the Dodgers. That's going to be so easy. And then like I went back to the Reds roster, looked at their stats since the All-Star break, and I was like, how can I be so soft as to say that the Reds are a perfect bad regular season, potentially sneaky good playoff team? I said that like before the season started in my write-up for the Reds. I faded them in the regular season. That didn't work out. They're in the playoffs. I said that in my write-up on our Patreon at the time. I cannot be soft. I've got to pick the Reds for 1 series. I'm going to stay on my screen because let's go the other way now. Speaking of the Reds, I think it's a good transition. We've gone way too long on the show without talking about the Phillies. It's time now. I hope we can agree that if a Reds-Phillies series does happen, I hope we can agree that not just the Phillies are going to be huge favorites. I think they won't even be favored by enough because I'm standing by everything I've said the last few shows. The Phillies are the best team in the National League. If we get a Dodgers-Phillies series, I'm going to be picking the Phillies. I genuinely do not care what the odds are. If the Phillies are underdogs against the Dodgers, I will be betting on the Phillies. Even without Zach Wheeler, they have a trio of starters in Jesus Luzardo, Chris. I don't know why I'm going out of order, but I really want Jesus Luzardo to do well. Jesus Luzardo, Christopher Sanchez, Ranger Suarez. The fact that Aaron Nola has not been bad in his last few starts could be useful out of the pen. But also, like, the Phillies have the best offense, I believe, in this entire playoff bracket. They hit home runs. They have playoff experience. Trey Turner is back right on time. Fun fact, Trey Turner, 305 batting average, won the batting title, one of the lowest batting averages ever to win the batting title. The Phillies have the best offense in baseball, and they have one of the best pitching staffs in baseball in terms of strikeout rate, in terms of what you want for a playoff staff, in terms of the fact that they have a few guys that can go deep into games, but they also have guys that have experience in high leverage, coming in the middle of an inning and getting strikeouts. They have the best roster balance to me in this entire bracket, and that is without Zach Wheeler. So I'm picking the Phillies.
Yeah, I mean, again, like this one, it shouldn't be so difficult. I'm picking, actually, I mean, my choice is harder because I didn't pick the Reds, but I actually am picking the Phillies to beat. Let me make sure that's what I even did. It really is a tough call, but I am also picking the Phillies to win their second round matchup. But Phillies Dodgers, like, that's the type of series it's a best of 5. Like, probably the likelihood is that it's going to go 5 games. Like, these are 2 teams with strong offenses, with strong pitching staffs. These might be the 2 best teams in the entire field, but the Phillies have home field advantage, and I know I picked the Phillies. This isn't that easy, but the Phillies are also my pick.
Yeah, and I feel like it's kind of anticlimactic because at our All-Star break episode, if you remember what I said about like where we view like World Series contenders, I perhaps put out one of the worst takes on our show on that episode, and I also put out potentially what could be one of our best is at the All-Star break I said the Giants were a sneaky contender. That was my worst take of the entire show. On the other end of the spectrum, neither the Phillies nor the Mariners were favorites to win the pennant at the time. And I said in that moment that if you talk about playoff preparedness, the Phillies are the best team in the National League. They since lost Zach Wheeler, and I still feel the same. And the Mariners are currently the favorite to win the American League. So it's absolutely wild, the path to which we've gotten here. It's anticlimactic because now it feels like if I end up picking the Mariners in the second round of the playoffs, it's going to feel like, yeah, he's picking Chuck. Like, everyone's going to pick the Mariners. But I was here when they were plus 800 to win the pennant. I was here when their offense was really struggling, when Cal Raleigh was actually in a slump right after he won the home run derby. And they were like, the home run derby cursed him. He's not going to be good anymore. And meanwhile, he's like still has a chance to win MVP. Like he's the underdog to Aaron Judge, but like as of the last day of the regular season, he had a real chance of winning regular season MVP. So I was here then, so don't say I'm a bandwagoner because that's where we stand on the Mariners. I'm gonna switch over to my screen and go over to the left side of the bracket, and I'm gonna pick the Mariners here. I don't know if if you're. I have a feeling we're gonna pick the same team, but in a matchup against the Guardians, like I said, like the Guardians can compete against some playoff teams because they have the potential to hit the home run ball. The Guardians have arguably the worst bottom of the order of a starting lineup in this entire playoff bracket. I feel like the only worst offense at the bottom of an order that I've seen in recent times was the Brewers a few years ago when they had players with, sub Mendoza line batting averages cleaning up. Like, I feel like those Brewers teams were potentially the only recent playoff teams worse in terms of depth of a starting lineup than the Guardians. Let's talk about the Mariners real quick. So on the season overall, they rank number 3 in WRC plus as an offense, number 7 since the All-Star break. We've talked about like their inconsistencies, and we talked about how Eugenio Suarez kind of like fits the mold of who they are. They can get really, really cold, and if they are, an exit to the Tigers or the Guardians, I will be really, really disappointed in the division series. But if it happens, you'll go back to like they're so inconsistent offensively. That's their route to being an early exit. If their offense disappears, which is possible. But their pitching staff, Max, you value bullpens a lot. In that regard, they are number 4 in bullpen Sierra since the All-Star break. And in terms of starting rotation, like it has been established what their top pitchers can do. George Kirby, Logan Gilbert, Brian Wu, it doesn't matter what order they go. That is the best 1-2-3 punch of starting pitching in the American League. And maybe you disagree with, certain other American League team in there, but I think this Mariners pitching staff is the best in the American League. They're better than the Guardians and the Tigers pitching wise, and they're better than the Guardians and the Tigers on offense. I will be shocked, disappointed, disgusted, and heartbroken if they don't win a playoff series.
For my pick, I mean, I don't like picking against my favorite team, but I agree. Like, if the team, not the Tigers, has the better offense and the better pitching, and then it's hard for me to pick the Tigers. So I'm also picking Seattle, who has home field advantage and has the first round bye, which everyone thought the Tigers would get. So I'm also picking Seattle.
Would you like to segue us into this AL East side of the bracket, because we haven't talked about the Blue Jays in a few episodes. It's one of the teams we've kind of been quiet about recently, but I remember the last time we were talking about the Blue Jays, we were talking about their trade deadline. Walk us through how you view the Blue Jays right now, because I don't think we've even talked to the DMs about the Blue Jays recently.
Yeah, so the Blue Jays, they have an elite offense, and their bullpen's really good as well. But my concern with the Blue Jays is their starting rotation, like compared to some of these other teams, and even in general, it's not so. The ceiling is not very high for this rotation. Like Kevin Gausman's pretty good. Like Chris Bassett's like okay, and then Scherzer's not been good, and even Bieber's like he came back from injury mid-season. He's not been so great, especially recently. Like I just feel like the Yankees have the stronger rotation, especially at like the top. Like I think probably Carlos Rodon, who's the Yankees' second starter, I feel like he's be the best starter probably on the Blue Jays. And certainly Max Fried is, who I think is clearly better than Rodon. He'd be by far the best on the Blue Jays. But Blue Jays do have a really good offense, but I still feel like the Yankees' offense it's definitely in the same level. And then the Yankees like rotation, and I think probably the bullpen's a little better. I think it makes up for the fact that they're the away team. And I mean, these teams, they tied for first place. So like they are even, and this isn't an easy call, but I'm picking the Yankees to beat the Blue Jays.
Anytime you have two teams tied for a division lead entering playoffs, they potentially get to face each other the second round. And then you have the third place team from that same division on the same side of the bracket, the same little corner. You would be a fool to pick the third place team to beat both of them on the way to the American League Championship Series. And luckily, I am a fool. I'm picking the Red Sox here. Now, let's talk about it. So I'll say this. The Red Sox, I've admitted that they should be underdogs to the Yankees. I don't think they should be as much as they are, which is why I bet on them at 40% value, at 40%, which I think is value. If they were to accomplish that and face the Blue Jays, I think the Blue Jays will be favored. Actually, I know the Blue Jays will be favored unless some drastic injuries happen. And I think I will probably agree with it. I will agree with the Blue Jays being favored. The Blue Jays, like you said, the pitching is going to be the reason they get eliminated if they do. But we also need to talk about the fact that Bo Bichette is not healthy. Ty France, who was actually a solid addition for the Blue Jays, was playing pretty well, was a good high leverage bat for them when he was acquired. He is not healthy. Anthony Santander just came back, and his swing and miss metrics have not been good. He hasn't, fully caught up to speed yet. Chris Bassett is not necessarily, he doesn't jump off the paper as a needle mover for a contender, but he's not Colin Rea bad. He would have been useful if he was healthy. There's a lot riding on Shane Bieber and Max Scherzer in 2025 to be decent enough to make up for the fact that this bullpen is not deep. At the end of the day, you're asking, do I take the injured Blue Jays or the injured Red Sox if this matchup happens? That's literally what you're asking of me. The Blue Jays have the better offense, but I think the Red Sox, if they get to this point, have the better pitching staff, because it's time to just admit that the Red Sox are well coached on the pitching side of things. The fact that they have made Lucas Giolito a serviceable starter, that kind of magnifies the rest of the staff, which is the fact that they found success out of the bullpen on a staff where I was not expecting much bullpen success. And that is outside the guys that have rolled as Chapman, who everyone talks about. That is Garrett Whitlock finding himself again. That is Steven Matz not being a terrible, just a random tosser of the baseball. That is Steven Matz being a useful lefty reliever out of the bullpen. The Red Sox have guys that the Blue Jays wish they had on the pitching side of the ball. They have a manager that knows how to use them, and they have the best starting pitcher in the series. Their offense, even since the Devers trade, with Roman Anthony hurt, is not one of the worst in the league. They are about average in a best-of-5 series. This gives me 2021 vibes when I didn't pick the Red Sox to beat the Rays, and I regretted it. I'm picking the Red Sox this time, and I'll probably regret it, but I have to pick the Red Sox.
I think it's funny. I think you're right, though, that maybe you shouldn't have bet against the Red Sox to make the playoffs, but just because you did that doesn't mean that it's wrong to pick them to advance now in the playoffs. I just think it's a little interesting that you didn't think they were going to make the playoffs, but now you think they're going to make the American League Championship Series. But
And this is what I mean. Like, whenever I say like a team is like a good playoff roster but not a good regular season roster, I think like the fact that I picked the Reds to win a playoff series is like arguably much more egregious than asking the Red Sox to win 2. And just because like the way I went in on the Reds, like in my Patreon article before the season started, I basically could have said like the Red Sox or the Cincinnati Reds are a trash franchise. If I said that, that probably would have been nicer than how in on them I went, in my article, because I was like, the offense is bad, the relievers are bad, and Nick Lodolo has to be healthy, and like if Hunter Green doesn't win Cy Young, like is this team even any good? And here I am picking them to win a playoff series, because the playoffs are just like that. So, I feel like what will actually happen will be some medium between the all chalk that you're picking and the kind of freak nature with which I'm going about my bracket. But that's why we're here, right? We're if we agreed on everything, nobody would be watching the show.
Yes, you're right.
All right, it's time. National League.
All right. This series was also tricky for me, but like we both have been like tough on the Brewers before, and I know they have the best run differential of baseball. They finished with the best record in baseball, and that's evidence in favor of the fact that the Brewers could beat the Padres. But even over the course of 162 games, if it was 162 million games, then I'd pick the Brewers no matter what I thought. But I feel like the Padres have the better offense, the Padres have the better bullpen, and Brandon Woodruff, I know they said that he might come back for the divisional series. They wouldn't say that if he wasn't going to probably come back, they wouldn't tell us that anyway. And then also, I don't know how they're going to use Jacob Misiorowski. Like, he might actually, I don't know if this is bold, but it's possible that he's their best pitcher. I don't know how they're going to use him. I think they said they're not planning to use him as a starter. So there's a chance that they get the most out of him and let him pitch. I don't know. There's question marks for me with the Brewers, and I'm going to pick the Padres again. I think the Padres are actually the better team, better than Milwaukee. So, home field advantage, it's not a guarantee that you're going to advance. So, I don't know who you're going to pick. I have a feeling you're going to pick the Padres too, but I'm picking the Padres to advance and face the Phillies.
This series is very difficult for me as well, and not because I think that this is like the opposite of a potential Phillies Dodgers series for me, because the Phillies and Dodgers are both so good that like I'm having to look at like who would pitch in the sixth inning, and like I give the Phillies the edge for like a transitional inning like that, and that's why I go with the Phillies. This is hard for me because I've called both of these teams fraudulent. This is hard for me because I think neither of them are on the level of the Phillies and Dodgers in terms of ceiling. That's why it's hard for me, because I think they're mediocre playoff teams. Mediocre playoff team kind of sounds oxymoronic, but you know what I mean. Like mediocre in this playoff pool. Let's talk about the Brewers a little bit since we haven't yet. So since the All-Star break, their offense ranks number 4 in WRC plus. At the overall on the season, they're number 9. They were actually like closer to average in the first half of the season. Andrew Vaughn suddenly finds himself. Christian Yelich picked it up eventually. Jackson Chourio, when he's healthy, like this is one of my favorite players in baseball. The bottom of their offense is like almost Guardians bad. Like that's how bad the bottom of their lineup can be at times. They have Isaac Collins, who at some point was a Rookie of the Year favorite, but he's kind of fallen off. Andrew Monasterio is probably going to get real life Major League baseball at bats in a playoff series. So the Brewers, like offense, like if they get shut out twice in a row in their first playoff series, like I'm not going to be surprised. Where it falls short for me for the Padres is that I don't like the top of their order. They have Tatis and they have Machado that are really good hitters. For some reason, 100 WRC plus Luis Arias, shout out to your trivia the other day, he bats number 2. For some reason, Xander Bogaerts rushed back from a wrist injury where I know for a fact, and you can quote me on this if you want to, he's not healthy at all. He's actually hit the ball better than I thought since he came back and rushed back. He's not fully healthy. He bats 5th or 6th. The bottom of their order is not great either. Jackson Merrill has been a complete disappointment to me this year.
I think you have too high expectations for bottoms of orders. Like they're at the bottom of the order because they're not good enough to be at the top of the order usually.
You know who has bottom of the orders that I actually expect to produce? The Mariners, the Phillies, the Dodgers, the Blue Jays, and I'm going to say this, and it's probably going to backfire. I like the Red Sox bottom of the order better than the Guardians, better than the Brewers, and potentially better than the Padres. And maybe that's a hot take, but you can't have auto outs in the playoffs is my point. And I feel like the Padres and Brewers both have auto outs, but the fact that the Padres have an automatic out at number 2, which obviously obvious hyperbole, But the fact that no one fears Luis Arias going deep off a playoff pitcher, right? Like that's a needle.
Now Luis Arias is going to hit 2 home runs in game 1 off of Cade Horton or whoever's pitching for the Cubs.
I mean,
I think you're giving Luis Arias fuel right now. Like, I think he's watching and he's going to be motivated to do well just to prove you wrong.
I mean, if the wind is blowing out and I don't bet Luis Arias to hit a home run game 1 of the playoffs, I'm just soft right now, right? So maybe it's reverse psychology. I'm picking the Brewers here. I'm just going to get straight to the point. I'm picking the Brewers here. Their pitching staff is just too good for me to completely ignore the fact that I don't love this Padres roster construction. I think it would be hilarious if once again they failed to make the National League Championship Series after they did so much at the trade deadline. Maybe a Freudian slip. I accidentally clicked on the Padres here. But I'm going to pick.
It's a sign that you should change your mind.
Every time I change my mind last minute, I've regretted it. Like this goes for like me taking like exams, like when I was in 5th grade. I'm not changing my mind. I'm picking the Brewers. Can we talk about the fact that like, yes, Freddie Peralta is good. Yes, Brandon Woodruff, like we expect him to appear in the series, and when he's at his best, he's good. I'm not even considering the fact that Jacob Mizorowski is going to be a factor in the series because like there's a complete chance he's not. Like there's a chance he's not going to be a factor in this series. Quinn Priester has spent his entire Pirates career being awful. The Red Sox try to reinvent him, it doesn't work out. Quinn Priester has been a solid starting pitcher. But also Chad Patrick is back, and Chad Patrick has had one of the best stuff plus arsenals in baseball when he was healthy this year. I'm not counting out Chad Patrick potentially starting a game in this series and potentially dominating. By dominating, I mean not necessarily go 7 innings like a Freddie Peralta, but doing his job 2 times through the order. And the fact that the Padres don't have that third starter where I can be like, I trust that guy. I trust Chad Patrick more than whoever the Padres throw as their third starter. I'm going to take the Brewers, and it feels weird that like picking the 1 seed feels like a bold take, but that's how underrated this Brewers starting rotation has become because we're so focused on how bad their offense is. And it's probably a good transition for me to say like, yeah, I'm picking the Phillies like to beat the Brewers because the Brewers are just that bad offensively. We're probably on the same page on that series.
I am also picking the Phillies to beat the Padres. I mean, we both have said that we think the Phillies are probably the best team in baseball. So I think the Phillies are better than the Padres, and the Phillies get the bye, and the Phillies get home field advantage. So even if I felt they were even, which they're definitely not. The Phillies are better probably in almost every way than the Padres. Even if they were the same with the bye, which definitely is a positive with rest and the home field advantage, I would pick the Phillies. So I'm definitely picking the Phillies.
I love it. We somehow disagreed on almost everything, but have the same pennant winner on the National League. This is actual cinema. Now, are you going to do the unthinkable on the left side of your screen?
To me, it's just I'm picking the team that's easily better, in my opinion, and the team that had the second best run differential in baseball and by far the best in the American League. I think it's going to be a rematch of, I think it was 2009, or I was not a baseball fan then, but I know that these two teams played against each other in the World Series before. I'm picking the Yankees to beat the Mariners.
Last year we got Yankees-Dodgers in the World Series, and it feels like everyone was like, this sucks, the Yankees and the Dodgers. And then the series started, and everyone was like, this is great, the Yankees and the Dodgers. If we actually get a Yankees-Phillies World Series, we're going to have similar reactions to that, like these two very passionate markets. I want to remind people what I said last week. Yes, the Yankees have a real chance of making a deep run in these playoffs just because, I mean, they're big favorites in round 1. No one's going to be shocked if they beat the depleted Red Sox. Both teams are depleted, a little bit, but no one's going to be shocked that the heavy favorite, won round one. I'm not going to be shocked if I'm wrong about the Red Sox, winning that matchup. No one's going to be shocked if the Yankees beat the Blue Jays, like you said, like they had the same record in the regular season. I would be shocked if the Yankees beat the Mariners in a playoff series. And I said it last week that the Yankees might get yeeted by the Red Sox. They might get yeeted by the Blue Jays, but they're definitely not beating the Mariners. And combine all of that, and the probability becomes low of winning all three series. And I claim that there's a 0% chance that they win the pennant. I'm sticking with that. Like, they'll beat the Red Sox. If they beat the Red Sox, I'm not moved. If they beat the Blue Jays, I'm a little moved. But they're not beating the Mariners. The Mariners, I disagree. The Mariners are just a better team in almost every aspect. The Mariners have the much better constructed offense because there's no automatic outs in the lineup. They lift the ball almost as much as the Yankees have recently. Yes, they can get ice cold for a couple of games, but they also give you that upside that the Yankees cannot at the bottom of the order. Again, like I keep mentioning bottom of the order because the Mariners have a good bottom of the order. The Yankees do not. Yes, the Yankees have the best hitter in the series in Aaron Judge. I'm not going to be that guy that pretends that he can never perform in the playoffs just because he hasn't before. I'm not going to be that guy. I'm a little smarter than that. Yeah, I may be a clown sometimes, but I'm a little smarter to realize, the best hitter in baseball is not a guarantee to disappear every single playoffs. Like, I completely acknowledge the fact that if Aaron Judge has his best playoff run ever, no one should be surprised. Jazz Chisholm, like, the fact that he has become underrated is wild to me because the Yankees should never be underrated. But this is arguably the best second baseman in baseball. Like, people don't talk enough about how he has played over 162 games for the Yankees now, and he has a 162 game pace of a 40-40 season, which is wild. Like, this guy's a superstar. But then there's question marks. Like, is Anthony Volpe really going to get playoff at bats? Is Jose Caballero going to get playoff at bats when he is, much worse against right-handed pitching? Is Ahmed Rosario going to be on the roster, despite the fact that the Mariners don't have many lefties? Like, there's so many questions about the Yankees that, like, I feel confident about Mariners winning these matchups. I think the Mariners have the better pitching staff overall because they have three guys that I feel good about potentially having a dominating playoff start. The Yankees have Max Fried, but I prefer the Mariners rotation. And if you're like Max and you think bullpens matter a lot, well, since the All-Star break, the Mariners bullpen ranks number 4 in Sierra. And yes, you take it with a grain of salt because regular season is not the same as the playoffs. But I'm picking the Mariners because I just think they're the better team. I said it when they were plus 800 to win the pennant. I'm saying it now. I will be giving away money to people in the Discord in our, WAP.com/Mo Institute. I'll be giving money to people in the Discord if the Yankees win the pennant, because I promised you that on last week's episode, and you're getting to see it now. Putting my money where my mouth is, and I'm putting my bracket where my mouth is. The Mariners, it doesn't matter who they face here. They're beating the Red Sox. They're beating the Yankees. It doesn't matter. The Mariners are not just winning the pennant, but fulfilling the prophecy of me at the All-Star break when I said the Mariners-Phillies is going to be our World Series matchup.
It's funny that, like, we both gave similar reasons for why we picked the way we did for the ALCS, but we both picked a different team. Which is kind of funny.
The beauty of evenly matched baseball.
I feel like the fitting thing after all this is that I am going to pick the Phillies, which I know you're going to do. So in the end, we both agree on who's going to win the World Series. I don't know if no team is likely to win the World Series, but with the Phillies having the bye and being maybe the best team to begin with, and they'll have home field advantage. Didn't the Phillies finish with a better record than the Yankees? They did. So I'm picking, even again, if these teams are even, which I think they are close to being even, I still would pick the Phillies because they have home field advantage. So my pick is the Phillies to beat the Yankees, and I think it should be a very, very, very good series.
I also think this World Series will be a great matchup between the two teams that I picked to win the pennant at the All-Star break. I think it's going to look really bad if, after all these disagreements, the graphics go out tomorrow. Shout out Andre617 Swaps on Twitter. Shout out to our graphic designer. It's going to look really bad if we pick the same team after all these disagreements, because the graphics, the World Series winners are what's going to stand out on these graphics, right? But I think there's such a thing as I was going to say something really philosophical and really deep, and it just completely crossed my brain what I was going to say. There's something there's something to hold of the fact that Bryce Harper has been one of the best playoff hitters of our generation, one of the best talents as an offensive player I've seen in my life. He has stepped up in the playoffs every single time. Kyle Schwarber actually gets a lot of credit for his high leverage moments, his playoff moments. Every single team he's gone, he's performed at a high level in high leverage situations. Trey Turner has multiple playoff runs where he's been one of the best players in baseball. And the fact that Bryce Harper doesn't have a ring just doesn't sit right with me, because this guy deserves a ring arguably more than any other player in baseball for the fact that he was a number one pick. People wanted him to fail. The fact that he went to the Phillies and, being a Nationals guy myself on the National League side, the fact that he said we're going to bring a title back to DC in his Philly introductory press conference, the Nationals then proceed to win the World Series. And he has gotten hate at every single step of his career. And you look at his fan graphs, and after all things are said and done, it's been 13 years he's been in the league. One day he's going to retire, and he will have a first ballot Hall of Fame career. His resume will make you think, why was I hating on this guy when this was one of the best players in baseball for over a decade, and maybe 2 full decades by the time he retires? He's going to have one of the best resumes of all time. And he has 171 postseason WRC plus. Like, do we talk about the fact that we talk about Mookie Betts choking in the playoffs, Aaron Judge choking in the playoffs, so many hitters choking in the playoffs? How come we're not talking about the fact that Bryce Harper is the other end of that scale? He has been consistently one of the best hitters in baseball when it has mattered the most. It's time for him to get a ring. And it's going to look bad when we pick the same team. But Max, even more so than me, I'm in the business of trying to be unique and correct. You're in the business of being correct, and I respect that about you. It's why we do this show together. And for the purposes of being correct, I'm sticking with the team I picked at the beginning of the season, the team I picked at the All-Star break. I'm gonna, the first time they lose a playoff game, the city of Philadelphia is gonna implode. Phillies fans are gonna be in our Discord being like, "I told you this team was bad." And I will sit here smiling knowing that they're going to win the World Series without their ace. So I'm happy to pick the Phillies, and I'm happy you're on the same page with me. I'm glad we're on the same page for something.
Yes.
Max, it was a fun episode when we disagreed. It was a fun episode, the fact that we agree on something pretty important, which is who's going to win the World Series. For those watching, if you're watching on YouTube, that means the playoffs have already started, and it's possible that by the time you're watching this video, my bracket is already busted, and Max is sitting here with a perfect bracket. All of this is possible. But we'll see you next Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. We're back on the Tuesday schedule. If you want to watch these streams live, twitch.tv/Jahan, or if you want to get all our content, notifications for every single bet I place in every single sport, as well as fantasy football rankings, join the Ball Institute Discord. Link to that is in the description. And we will see you for episode 12, which will be our second playoff episode for the Deep Drive.